Down goes Bama. Those are the words that everybody except for Bama fans dream about during the off-season. And we didn't have to wait very long for these words to come alive. Colorado appears to be on a bowling track, and is there anybody else who can challenge Caleb Williams for Heisman and the number one pick? My name is Jens, and this is your AFCB College Recap Podcast. Boy, what a weekend it was. I surely enjoyed it. I sat down for quite a long time on Saturday night, and it was also quite a hot evening. Like, it was 29 degrees in my apartment. I don't know. I have a special guest with me today. Dirk, how was your weekend? Was it as warm watching college football as it was with me?
Yeah, a bit the same. I went out to dinner, went to a party. Then came home and had to watch college football slightly drunk.
You had to watch. It sounds like you were tortured.
No, it was quite nice. No, the only bad downside to that was that, of course, you fall asleep a little bit faster than you want to. So that's might be the problem. But, well, it was a good weekend of college football, not like week one, but it was still very much okay. But yeah, starting from this week, we have to mix it up with the NFL. So yeah, it's a different story to tell at home.
Yeah, the one thing I noticed immediately was that we are blessed as NFL fans to have Red Zone, because when I'm watching college football, I have 3 screens open with me. I have my TV, who's playing like the biggest game I can find on the schedule. Then I have my 2 PCs, and both are split screened. So I have about 5 games on at one point in time, trying to capture like images or big plays from all the different games I am kind of excited about. And when I compare it to the NFL last night, I had the big game, I had the Vikings on, and then I had Red Zone on my PC, and it was kind of a blessing. Yeah. So it's a different world watching college football. I don't know which one I prefer, actually.
College football, I do the exact opposite of NFL. NFL, I watch Red Zone as well, and only Red Zone. Because it's enough attention already. But then college football, I just pick one game and I watch that one. Because you get updates from other games when commercials are going. So that's okay with me. But NCAA, college Red Zone, if you can get all the networks to work together for that, sure, why not?
I think if you followed the discussion a little bit in the off season about TV deals and TV money and conference switches and realignments, I think getting everybody on the same page about one big NCAA Red Zone, it's quite optimistic.
And in the NFL, I mean, Fox has some games, CBS has some games, NBC has a game, and then ABC and ESPN, they have Monday Night Football, and still everything is watchable on Red Zone. So I don't know, but it's, as always, it's a money thing.
And we're talking about the NCAA. I think it's an organization who's not very known to be helpful for the fans. They'd rather see them burn than the NFL tries to involve its watchers. All right, but we can go on about the NFL, I think, in another podcast.
Sure.
This is a college podcast, and the biggest news that actually broke recently, and we're not going to talk too elaborately about it because it's quite a sensitive topic, but Michigan State put his head coach, Mel Tucker, on inactive, so he's suspended without pay. He's not fired. And that is because there was some allegations to him or about him about sexual harassment, actually. It's quite a sensitive topic. We don't have the full details at the moment, but it's quite an important news flash that broke. Michigan State is going on with an interim head coach at the moment, and they're probably looking at another head coach because if we're seeing the nature of the allegations, it's not something that the head coach is coming back from. And the one thing people keep talking about is the $80 million that Mel Tucker is still owed. So even if you fire him, Michigan State still has to pay him $80 million. So it's quite a sensitive topic. I don't know if you've heard the news already.
Well, you told me
on all socials.
And it's a juicy story. I mean, there have been stories like this in the past, but it usually involves coaches cheating on their wives, or like Ed Orgeron just enjoying the life a little bit too much and having some dirty talk on the side. But this is next level. It kind of reminds me of the and this goes to before your days, I think, the Jerry Sandusky story with Penn State. And there was a coach which was actually fired, and the whole program had to go through hell for a few years because of that. So I don't know, I hope.
And it's still a tricky topic at Penn State.
It is.
When you bring it up at a press conference, I've seen it in a recent documentary, when you bring it up at the press conference, everything goes haywire and people lose their shit.
Yeah, so let's hope, because I find the Michigan State program quite, well, I like them. It's a sympathetic. It's usually always the underdog in a lot of big games, and they sometimes beat Michigan. It's been a while, but like I said, I like Michigan State, and I hope this story does not bring them down like it did to Penn State. But okay.
Yeah, well, let's be honest. Mel Tucker got his big contract because he had that one good season, and now Michigan State is a bit on the downside of that epic season.
They're 2-0, but yeah.
They're 2-0, but they play Central Michigan and Richmond. So next week they have Washington. So that'll probably be a 2-1 record after next week. But anyway, we have a little bit better news to talk about as well. And the biggest game, and we've mentioned it in the introduction, was Alabama-Texas, the game that everybody actually pinpointed on their schedule. Like when we were doing the preparations for this season, we looked at the weekend that Alabama played Texas, or Texas played in Tuscaloosa, and we got a big one. And I think we've mentioned it in the preview we launched on Saturday, that it could be the year in which Alabama is considered an underdog. Although the bookies did not quite agree with that statement, they were a 7.5 favorite. You still had a feeling that Texas wouldn't go in there just to lose by 7.5.
Yeah, it's a whole other thing to go on the road in college than it is in the NFL, in a way that it's much tougher. College football stadiums tend to get really loud. It's a different environment. You have to travel, but then to go to Bryant-Denny Stadium, I don't think, what's the capacity? It must be 80,000, something in that range. Almost no Texas fans, so it's an impressive victory. Of course, Alabama won last year, but that was the game where Quinn Ewers he got injured and had to be replaced, and that was the end of that game, actually. So sweet revenge for Texas.
Yeah, there were actually 100,000 people in attendance of the game. So it's on
in
record
Alabama,
at ESPN.
I mean,
in Alabama, and it even started before the game, because you always have the
game day,
the music coming from the student bands in the stands. And last year, when Alabama went to Texas, the band players got like these awful tickets and bad seats. So I don't think they even went to Texas. Alabama did it the same this year. So Texas got its tickets, and they were like top seats, like on the top of the stands.
Yeah,
like
the nose bleachers. There's a good word for that in English. The nose bleachers.
Worst of all seats.
Yeah, you need binoculars, and if you lean back, you might fall down several hundred feet.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but they were present, and they didn't go unnoticed, because Texas got this one in hand from the start. And I had the feeling that Alabama didn't really fully had a grasp on the game. Like they had some moments in which they dominated but it was like a part of the drive always, not like a full drive. They weren't like fully dominant. And when Texas got on started driving the ball, you had a feeling that Quinn Ewers was in possession of this offense, that he was in rhythm with his skill position players. So I didn't have the feeling that Texas could lose this one, except if they fucked it up themselves.
Yeah,
And
which they didn't.
they didn't. Like I mentioned the skill positions. Adonai Mitchell finished the game with 3 receptions on 78 yards, and he had 2 touchdowns on those 3 receptions. So that's quite efficient. Xavier Worthy had 5 receptions for 75 yards and 1 touchdown. And the guy who didn't even get a touchdown with the most reception yards was the tight end Jatavian Sanders, who was a big part of the game last Saturday. So you saw that Quinn Ewers had this connection which could prove very helpful in the coming season, because Texas had its most difficult game in week 2 against Alabama. The one coming up that draws attention is on the 7th of October against Oklahoma.
The Red River, what's it called these days?
The Red River Showdown.
Rivalry Showdown. It used to be shootout, but that's
it was a shootout last year. But they have Oklahoma still, and they have Kansas State. But those are the only 2 ranked opponents that they still have on the schedule in the coming weeks. So I'm quite looking forward to Texas being a legit playoff candidate, and the AP poll confirmed that, because now they are ranked 4th. In the AP poll, they had like a 7th place jump.
Oh no, okay.
I think they had 2 first place votes compared to Georgia's 55.
No, still quite good. I mean, Texas has been away, as I say, for quite some time, and I think now they're really back. Like you say, Quinn Ewers was in control. If you look at the condensed game, there's a really big difference between when Quinn Ewers is in the pocket and when Jalen Milroe, the Alabama quarterback, is in the pocket, because he wasn't. He was always running around, and was that the O-line which did not have a good game? Did I not have a good class O-line, or is it Jalen Milroe who gets scared quite quickly? I don't know what your opinion is on that.
I think it's a bit of both, because he even scrambled when the pockets were clean. And the O-line is quite young, and the big man on the O-line is the left tackle, Caden Proctor, who is the 5-star commit who initially committed to Iowa and then switched his commitment. So he's an Iowa native, so that was a big deal, him committing to Iowa. He even went to the games last year. We published about it on the page. And then he switched his commitment to Alabama after talking with Nick Saban. Treason. But it's actually a big treason, and people were quite upset with it. But hey, what you gonna do about Alabama, Nick Saban, if he comes calling? He had an up and down game, which you can expect from a true freshman. So it's his first year playing. So it's a bit of both. And although Jalen Milroe showed why he can be an elite quarterback, he also showed why he can be absolute dog shit.
Yeah.
So he's very turnover prone, and I think that's the reason why he probably won't get drafted until end of day 2, begin day 3.
2 terrible interceptions, really. I mean, it seemed like where you don't see the other player, and then you only see your own wide receiver, and it was like sometimes an interception is partly on the wide receiver. These 2 interceptions were 100% on Jalen Milroe. Mm-hmm. And the other thing, of course, he has an impressive, let's say, body. I mean, he's athletic. He can run. He can scramble. I mean, I think he scored once on a scramble. But then, we didn't get to mention his wide receivers almost, his Alabama wide receivers. And you did get to mention the Texas wide receivers, because what Quinn Ewers did, he took the top off the Alabama defense. I mean, these corners were getting burned left and right. But
even of course, Kool-Aid McKinstry.
Kool-Aid McKinstry, one of these great names in college football.
Yeah, but he's a top college cornerback.
Yeah, he's a top corner. I mean, we'll see him playing on Sunday in the next few years. But, I mean, you have to remember Steve Sarkisian, the Texas head coach, was a OC for Nick Saban. He knows his system, so he probably also knows the defense. They're still playing a little bit, and you started to know. I mean, we started to notice that in this game. This was a deserved Texas win. Quinn Ewers, well, he's back into the first round draft conversation, I think.
Yeah, he really is.
Of course, it's his second year as a starter now. I mean, Milroe, he has his second game as a starter. So, I mean, who knows what we're talking about in 3 months from now. But at this moment, Quinn Ewers, one of the top quarterbacks in the country.
And what can we say about Alabama in the future then? Because they now have one loss. They're 1-1. They lost at home. The SEC is not very friendly, so to say. So they still have Ole Miss, who won against Tulane last weekend, who won against a good Tulane. That's important to note. They still have Texas A&M, and although they lost against Miami this weekend, they still have shown signs of improvement against or compared to last year. They have Tennessee, they have LSU. It's not an easy schedule for them. It's the SEC.
No, but the thing in college football, of course, you need to impress the voters. And the teams you beat need to have beaten other strong teams as well. And that's a bit of something I haven't seen in a long, long time, is where the SEC is struggling. I watched this weekend, 5 SEC teams played against Power 5 opponents. How many do you think won of those 5?
So the 5 who played against Power 5.
Yeah. I'm going to go ahead. It's 3. I mean, so Alabama lost to Texas. That's 0-1. Texas A&M, as you mentioned, they lost to Miami. Vanderbilt lost to Wake Forest. I mean, it's 3 losses already. Then Arizona almost beat Mississippi State in OT. Arizona is a weak Pac-12 team. And Auburn, they only got past California in the last few minutes. Also a weak Pac-12. So it could have been 0-5.
Which isn't very impressive.
So the SEC, I don't know, is this transfer portal doing its thing? Is it the NIL deals? But this normally you could say that Alabama, LSU, and even Mississippi State or Ole Miss, they're powerhouses. They struggle. They've all had losses, or almost all had losses. So Alabama will have problems impressing the voters if they beat LSU, an LSU team which, as you mentioned, lost to Florida State. Tennessee is also a question mark for me. If that's going to be a powerful team.
They still need to prove it, and they didn't quite impress people last weekend. They played Austin Peay. They won 13-30, which isn't very impressive.
No.
Knowing that you have one of the most explosive quarterbacks running the system in Joe Milton. He ended the game with 228 yards and 2 touchdowns. But it's as you say, the SEC isn't as impressive anymore as it used to be.
Which is a good thing.
Next season, yeah. And I think I had the discussion with Alexis off record in the off season to see, is the top of the Big Ten better than the SEC? And I think we came to the conclusion that it is. I'm putting Georgia against every. So, all right, we're back, I think.
Yeah, we were out for quite some time. No, continue.
Yeah, okay, so you have the top 3 in the Big Ten and the top 3 in the SEC. And I want to just see who's going home with the victory. So Georgia, against anybody, is probably taking home the win, although they haven't really impressed quite so far this season. But okay, they're playing nobodies at the moment. Michigan, okay, that's a top team. They won't win against Georgia. I'm putting Michigan at the top. But it's a very close race with Penn State, and I'm putting Penn State against anybody from the SEC after Georgia. And even Ohio State, this Ohio State with Marvis Harrison Jr. and a little struggling Kyle McCord, I'm still putting them against, who's it going to be? It's going to be Alabama, I think, and they probably take home the win. So, yeah, the SEC is not the best conference at the time. And maybe we can even say that the Pac-12 is a top dog right now.
Yeah, but
Can we say that the Pac-12 is?
It's week 2, and they usually kill each other off. And then we should be lucky that USC is left standing at the end of the year, which would be a good thing. But as you say, Georgia is number 1 at this moment. They will keep getting number 1 votes as they keep winning, and they will not lose. But they might have some problems keeping the number 1 because they also have a very weak schedule. At this moment, only Mississippi State and Tennessee are ranked opponents, and they could both lose this ranking in the next few weeks. So we'll have to see about that.
Yeah, but they probably won't drop
They will not, but
Georgia without them losing.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. Okay, but we can talk about on and on about the SEC not being a powerhouse anymore. But I quickly talked about it. The Pac-12 is maybe the top dog right now, and one of the hottest teams that we currently have in the Pac-12 is Colorado. And they kind of trashed Nebraska, although they got off to a very slow start. The offense didn't really sputter, but couldn't quite find its rhythm. And then Shedeur Sanders, he kind of exploded, and he put again on some highlights on tape. And I'm really confident in saying that we can maybe expect Shedeur Sanders, if he can keep this on, we can maybe expect him in New York. And I'm feeling more confident saying this now compared to last week.
Yes, to keep performing the way he's doing right now. I mean, in the beginning of the game, I was having questions. Out of the gate, he was not as impressive. I mean, they were struggling against the Nebraska team, which has not been strong. I had the same reservations last week with TCU. But in the end, they manhandled Nebraska. But it was also partly due to Nebraska shooting itself in the foot. I mean, their quarterback had 2 fumbles, an interception by the time halftime rolled on. So it's I mean, I already have.
Yeah, he's a turnover machine.
Yeah, he's a transfer as well. I mean, why did they choose him?
He came from Georgia Tech, probably.
Yeah, he did. Matt Rule, new coach, so he got to choose his quarterback in the transfer portal, and they chose him. It could have been better, but I already have September 23rd marked with my marker in my agenda, because that's when Colorado plays Oregon.
Yeah, it's going to be the first big test, and I know we've had them against a very stout Nebraska defense, because they only lost by 3 points against Minnesota, it was, I think. So we can probably expect them to only be tested for real against Oregon, and then back-to-back USC. So I'm really looking forward to those 2 games. Travis Hunter ended the game with 129 snaps. So he played against TCU 150 snaps. Now it's 129. I don't know how long he can keep this up.
We'll have to choose. Quite sure about that. He can be impressive on both sides of the ball, but he cannot be elite. And I think he'll have to be either a good wide receiver or a good cornerback. That's what I'm thinking. But he was impressive. He had some good catches. I think he had a touchdown as well. But if we want to see him in New York as well, we might have to wait and see. On the other hand, Dion is got Colorado now to 2-0, which we haven't seen in many years. If it wasn't for Coach Prime, we wouldn't have noticed if Colorado was 2-0, even if they beat TCU. That's okay, impressive victory. But the Colorado-Nebraska game would not have gotten the national attention which it got today. College game day will be in Colorado next week for Colorado State.
Yeah,
it's also unheard of.
The big one.
The big one. I mean, goes to say what. I mean, this is maybe telling more about week 3 than anything else. But it's a fun team to watch. I mean, that's the least we can say. Most of them are transfers, as we mentioned last week. So it's a cool story. I mean, the students came onto the field after beating Nebraska.
Yeah, and I think the way we've seen this program being turned around, and I think it's under the direction of Deion Sanders, but we can't forget Sean Lewis, who's the offensive coordinator over there. He came over from Kent State, and that program is in disarray right now. So he's a quality offensive coordinator. You can see it with Shadur Sanders, with Travis Hunter. It's a nice team to watch, and I'm actually looking forward now to watching this team moving forward. I'm just having some questions on the defense because he got sacked 7 times, which is very much.
Yeah. One thing also, he's holding on to the ball sometimes way too long.
Yeah.
And if he's going to play elite defenses, he's going to get sacked even more.
Yeah. So that's probably going to hurt his draft stock if he keeps this up, because you want to see him get rid of the ball a lot quicker. But I have to watch the tape still. It's still on the schedule for this week. But I want to see if it's because he just wants to make the play like Caleb Williams does, or if it's just because his receivers aren't open enough, or if he can't throw his receivers open. So that's a little bit up in the air. But there's one big throw. I actually shared it on the page as well. You can go back and go watch it. There's like this throw where when Colorado is on the left hash of the field, and then he has like this big completion all the way, they are on the right hash, and he has a completion to the left side of the field in a bucket where only Travis Hunter can go and get it. And that was the most impressive play, or the allowed play for Colorado, because he had one scramble, which was even more impressive, but got turned back because of a penalty. All right, I talked about him quite just a little bit. Caleb Williams, is there anybody else who's going to be the number 1 in New York and the number 1 draft pick next year?
New York? It's difficult to tell. I mean, if he quits playing tomorrow or gets hurt, he will not win the Heisman. But he will still be the number 1 overall pick. I didn't like what his dad said this week, that he doesn't want to play for certain teams, and I think he means Arizona by that. You told me last week he was cocky. I mean, this is quintessential being cocky. I mean, who do you want to play for? I mean, the top NFL teams will not end up 31st, 32nd, and one of the 2 top teams will choose Caleb Williams. I mean, the number 1 overall pick, he will be him. Just accept it. Trevor Lawrence, he went to the Jacksonville Jaguars, trash team. Joe Burrow went to the Bengals, who are a trash team at the moment. And they turned those programs around. I mean, why? Yeah. I don't see how Caleb Williams, if he goes to play in Phoenix, which is close to California, cannot turn that program around. Yeah.
And it got me thinking a little bit about, I'm now switching to basketball, to LeVar Ball. Is like the most famous dad in the NBA. He's like the father of LiAngelo Ball, Lonzo Ball, and LaMelo Ball. But everybody hates the ball players, the ball children, just because they hate that. And
I have zero basketball knowledge.
He's like the biggest prick in the realm of basketball dads, and it kind of got me thinking about that, because you see players hating just the players because they hated that. And I think Caleb Williams needs to keep his dad in check a little bit more.
I mean, because the threat was that he was going to stay in school for 1 more year, that would be really, really stupid, because he can get hurt. You can miss out on even more money than he's making right now at USC. So just, kind of like, just like you said, keep his dad in check. I mean,
yeah. Okay. The second guy I have in pencil for the Heisman is Michael Penix Jr., the quarterback for Washington. They play against Tulsa, so again, not the biggest name you have on the planet, but still an okay program. He finished the game with 409 passing yards and 3 touchdowns, so he's solidifying his run as a top 3 quarterback in the nation. And he's even proving to NFL watchers that he can keep healthy. We're not jinxing anything, he was healthy during 2 games this season, and injuries were an issue for him before last year. And that's why he fell in most draft rankings. But if he can keep up his healthy season and keeps putting on these impressive statistics, I can see him going to New York as well, and he will be a round one quarterback as well, same as probably Bo Nix, who's impressing people as well. He's not in the top 3 for me when it comes to Heisman.
Yeah, we disagree on that one, but okay.
Yeah, but you have a few people going into the first round. We talked about it last week.
Yeah.
We don't need to elaborate it further on this week. And I have the third guy for me is Shedeur Sanders. He's a third guy I'm sending to New York after this weekend.
He's going to be sent to New York if he keeps up like this. The first round draft capital will still have to see some more consistency, I think. And I'd like to see some NFL scouts chop him up and see what it will. I mean, where's the arm strength? Where's the peripheral vision? How does he go through his reads? And if I compare this to Drake May, the North Carolina quarterback, who might have a down year this year, will not go to New York because he doesn't have the talent around him anymore like these other quarterbacks do. But he might be a steal for NFL teams if like he has a down year, like Sam Howell had in his last year. And Sam Howell eventually got drafted in the 5th round. Okay, Drake May will not fall that much, but let's say I compared it to Lamar Jackson, not the playing style, of course.
Yeah,
but Lamar Jackson won the Heisman in his sophomore year, I think, had a down and was drafted 32nd overall by the Ravens, which is a steal. So some team, I don't know, Minnesota Vikings or anything, they could end up with Drake May just somewhere in the middle rounds.
I think it's optimistic.
In the middle of the first round. So.
Yeah, I think it's optimistic. I think he really needs to have a very bad year for him to drop out of the first, because he's put on some...
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, the NFL scouts are sometimes like that. Sam Howell, he was considered one of the top quarterbacks before that one season. Okay, he fucked up big time sometimes in that last season, but all his talent was gone. And I don't think that Drake May will have a top year, so it's interesting for sure.
And talk about Drake May, he didn't have a single touchdown last week. Against App State. So it was the rematch of one of the most interesting games last year of App State against North Carolina, in which North Carolina won after the game totaled about 120 points combined. It again went to overtime. Not a single touchdown passing for Drake May. Drake May had a rushing touchdown in overtime, which kind of sealed the game because App State wasn't able to answer that one. But the big guy in that game was Omarion Hampton. For me, he's the best or most breakout player this weekend we've seen. But it wasn't Drake May. And after this weekend, I'm not sure if he is a solidified New York guy or a Heisman guy this season.
At this point, I don't think that matters too much for Drake May anymore. I mean, he's on North Carolina. He's not on Alabama, who can reload every year. He's not on Ohio State or at Texas, for that matter. So I think he just needs to solidify himself as a top QB and hope that NFL scouts will keep looking at him like that.
Yeah. One other guy I do want to mention, however, and maybe we can talk about two guys really quickly. It's the duo J.J. McCarthy, Blake Corum of Michigan. They didn't really play a big game. They played UNLV this weekend. They trashed them 35-7. But Blake Corum had 3 rushing touchdowns, which is quite impressive. And even he only had 80 rushing yards, and he still had 3 touchdowns. So quite an impressive game. He's rising in the rankings, same as his quarterback, who's had like top 5 PFF grades, I think, over the last two weeks. So Michigan is a team to watch. And that's why they probably solidified as the second team, and Texas or FSU, whoever you like at 3 or 4, is still a bit behind them, unless Michigan kind of has a falling out or falls down in another game. Some quick notes I have after this weekend. Utah Utah was one of the top teams, and they were predicted to be the Pac-12 champion. I'm not so sure of that anymore because they got very lucky against Baylor, a team that was kind of, and I'm repeating
Baylor
myself,
lost last week, so
they were kind of trash. Yeah, so Baylor lost last week. I'm looking up right now who they lost to. It was Texas State, 42-31.
Which is a terrible loss. It's a terrible loss for a Power 5 team.
Yeah.
And if Utah just squeaks by that, because I think they were like
it was
they were trailing with a few.
Yeah. So with 2 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, they trailed 6-13. Then they scored to even it to 13-all, and then they scored one last time after Utah had a turnover. Or Baylor had a turnover, however you want to.
They failed to cover my 7.5 point spread, bastards.
Quite by the slimmest margins possible at all. Yeah, we've said it as well previously. Tennessee fails to impress, and they are to me the fourth team in the SEC. It's quite not really a downfall, but if you compare it to last year, where they had Hendon Hooker and Jalen Hylett and Cedric Tillman, who was injured for part of the season. It's probably a rude awakening for Tennessee fans, seeing this Josh Heupel offense not really struggling, but the engine isn't running as smoothly as you probably want it to run. Another team that failed to impress me last weekend was Oregon. They trailed 18-27 against Texas Tech, which lost against Wyoming the week before in overtime, so an FCS team as well, and until they scored 20 in the fourth quarter. But they still had to rely on a late game comeback to pull out a win in this game. So Oregon, I'm not so sure that...
You know what's a pity? That the Colorado-Oregon game, which I mentioned before, is played in Oregon. I don't know if you've probably seen a lot of college football games in Eugene, Oregon. Always seems to be raining. A lot of these guys from Colorado, they don't come from rainy, cold areas, so they're not going to be used. It's a big atmosphere, and I want to give Colorado a chance against Oregon because that would set a marquee game against USC a few weeks later. So, like I said, I'm not a fan of Bo Nix, so I don't think. Well, this Oregon team right now, they're not impressing me as much as they used to.
Yeah,
so,
there are a few teams in the Pac-12 who are kind of underwhelming.
On the other hand, like you mentioned, Washington, they're number 8 in the rankings before. This is unprecedented. Normally, Washington and Washington State are the crappy teams. So.
Yeah, well, quarterback play, and I think Oregon is quite lucky that they still have Bo Nix. Otherwise, it would have been a whole other story. They still are ranked. They probably won't get out of the 25.
Yeah, overvalued, in my opinion.
Maybe a little. So we'll have to see. But it's still the first 2 weeks of the season. A lot can happen still. Alabama can rally. Oregon can rally as well.
For sure.
All right. Some other big losses. I'm just going to breeze through them really quickly. Washington, who was ranked number 19, lost against Washington State, 22-31.
Who lost to Washington State?
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin, okay.
Yeah.
You said Washington, I thought. No.
Oh, no. Sorry. Wisconsin.
The Badgers.
Lost 22-31. Texas A&M, who was ranked 23, lost in Miami, which is quite impressive, losing in a stadium which is filled by 50%. But
that's typical Miami. I mean, they're bandwagon fans. They won now against a stronger team. They'll fill the stands even more next week. Yeah,
but a breakout player who we already knew actually last year, who had like a little bit of a down year, who's on the rebound this year, is Tyler Van Dyke. He played lights out and had 5 touchdowns.
He is, maybe short like Tyler Van Dyke. He's statuesque in the pocket. I mean, that's not really what we're used to seeing in college football. But I mean, he's throwing bombs. So
yeah, and Cameron Kitchens, he's this top safety, had an interception in this game. So probably good to watch out for this guy. He had to leave the game due to a head injury, which looked quite scary. But Cristobal assured us that everything was on the up and up. And then Houston Rice. The only reason why I am having this one over here is because I had a bet on Houston, and yeah, they lost 41 to 43 in 2 overtimes. And Josh Pate always says you don't lose to foot.
But they did. Yeah.
They did, which was quite embarrassing. One last topic before we close off this podcast. We followed Sylvain in the off-season a little bit. He played against Louisville last week, but he's out for the season due to a torn ACL. But luckily for us, we can still watch him play next year because he has a year of eligibility left because of the COVID year. So we'll be able to see him play for Georgia Tech next year unless he transfers out. But don't watch in the Georgia Tech games. If you want to see Sylvain, he'd probably be in the stands. Yep. All right, Dirk, did I miss anything? Because a lot happened last weekend.
I think we covered our bases. I don't know. Did you see the guy, the turnover chains that they have everywhere? There was one team, and I don't remember which one, they were wearing a tire, like a real car tire.
No, I only saw the throne of Colorado.
Yeah, you need to look up that tire. That's awful. I mean, it's taking it to the next step. But no, it was a good week of college football. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, there's not such a good week ahead of us. I don't know what your opinion is on that, but I think we can take it easy this weekend.
Yeah, I think if you want to schedule some plans with your family, I would advise you to do it this week or the coming weekend, because the week after that we're probably going full force again, and it'll be the biggest week so far we've had, with Colorado, Clemson, with USC playing against Arizona State, which I'm looking forward to because we get to see Jaden Rashada play against a big team. You have UCLA and Utah, so big things coming in week 4. But week 3, we can maybe take it easy, which we probably won't do. But that's just because we want to still see some football. All right, Dirk, I'm going to thank you. We did it in 8 minutes less than last week, which is trending upwards. We're aiming for 30 minutes by the end of the season, which is still quite optimistic. But hey, we can maybe have an overrunner for the next podcast. All right, I will thank you very much for tuning into this podcast. Don't forget to watch out for the preview who's coming on Friday or Saturday for week 3 to see some betting tips, because people still want to lose some money in the weekend. At least I do.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, guys, and see you next time.